Hello, everybody. Gonna give it just one more minute to get started here, but thanks for joining. Good, good to see you all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. All right, let's kick things off. So I'm Rob Zuber, CTO of CircleCI. I've been with the company a little over 8 years and working in the space of software delivery and I guess focused on the part of software construction that is delivery for almost 25 years at this point. So excited to speak to you today about that. This is the first of a series of webinars that we're doing on CICD, how to be effective in CICD. And for the first, I want to spend a little bit of time just introducing the subject overall, how we think about it at CircleCI, and some things that you can be thinking about in your organization as you look to, to shift, to adapt to the current state of software delivery. So what we're going to talk about today is, first of all, the current state of software delivery, a little bit of how we got here, some trends and changes in the industry. Second, the future, where we see all of this going, the continued evolution of the software ecosystem. As I'm sure you're aware, one of the only constants in software is change. We love to, think about how we can do things better, how we can move faster, and that means we're constantly reevaluating how we do things, and that also means we're constantly having to adapt to some of those new approaches. Look at that a little bit through the lens of culture. So what does it mean inside your organization to have a great culture of delivery? How to take folks from the place that they are, which is often wrestling with trying to get things done, into a place where everyone feels like they can be really successful, and then ultimately how that leads to building a great team through attracting and retaining talent in an environment that feels like just a really great environment to work in. So let's jump right in and talk about software delivery today. So as I said, I've been doing this for quite a while, coming up on about 25 years, I think, in the industry, and how we think about software delivery has evolved a lot in that time. When we talk about CI and CD, we're really talking about the delivery pipeline. How do we go from the work that we're doing in terms of creating capabilities in our software platform to putting that in front of customers and delivering value to them and getting value back to us as a business? Um, and over the course of the last, we can call it decade, we can call it 20 years, we've constantly been in this evolution. We've always been looking for ways to do that faster, to reduce the time to feedback, to make sure that we are working in a way that allows us to understand customer needs and adapt to what's happening in the market, transitioning from, a very classical waterfall approach of a very big plan up front to more of we use the word agile a lot, an adaptive approach, where as we learn, we can continue to change what it is that we're doing to focus on the needs of the customer and make sure we're meeting that. And so within the realm of CI and CD, we really talk about build, test, deploy, and release, moving from validating that our changes, our new software even compiles, to passing automated tests, to then putting it out into the environment where it's going to be accessible to customers, and ultimately putting it in front of those customers. So we separate deploy and release, meaning moving artifacts around versus actually making software available to the end users that are going to use it. And as we continue to do this, what we focus on is not just doing that faster, but doing it with the confidence that we're doing it well, right? That all of our customers and everybody out there, if you're looking at CI and CD, is not only putting things in front of customers quickly, but doing it with confidence, knowing that the changes that you're making are good. So the problem that we're setting out to solve for our customers, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, you're thinking about, is that every software team wants to move faster, regardless of how fast you're moving today. Ultimately, you want to move faster. The ability to deliver value to your customers is tied to how quickly you can conceptualize something, build it, and get it out in front of them in a way that's going to allow them to use it. And that's tied very much to your confidence in doing that. So a lot of teams know they want to move faster, but they're lacking the confidence to really accelerate, to actually move faster. Not only because they want to move faster themselves, they feel like they're maybe stuck or they have good ideas and they can't get feedback on them, but because they're feeling pressure from competition. Everybody out there is working on software. I mean, at this point, I think it's safe to say that almost every company is a software company, regardless of what industry you're actually in. You're thinking about getting a digital experience out to your customers, whether you're building a car that's almost entirely controlled by computers and software at this point, or running a bank where your entire interaction with your customers is over a mobile phone. Software is truly differentiating how your customers are experiencing what you offer. And in order to do that, you want to be able to move quickly, again, ahead of the competition, get great ideas and new innovations out in front of your customers, and do all that feeling confident about it. So, again, going back to that transition that we've been going over the last 10, 15, 20 plus years, we've really shifted in terms of how we think about building. And this has been great for us overall. 15 years ago or more, we were building almost entirely code bases of our own work. So if you needed something done, you wrote the software yourself, whether it was something as simple as parsing some strings up to integrating with third-party services, sending email, doing billing, whatever it might be that it takes as a foundation to build the thing that you're trying to offer. You were writing that code yourself. And now, with the sort of growth of open source, with the growth of third-party services, we've been able to take advantage of a lot of things that exist out in the market to build focused on the core value that we're trying to deliver to our own customers. And then within our teams, as teams have grown, or within our organizations as we've grown, we've been able to break things out into teams and really orient teams around smaller code bases, primarily through the use of microservices. That pattern has evolved, but has been around for a while, and it's something that's more heavily adopted, I would say, in many, many software organizations. And so that combination of breaking apart your monolith and then integrating more third-party code, third-party services, et cetera, has really changed the way that we think about the software that we're delivering. So it allows us to move faster. Teams can focus on their specific problems. They can take things off the shelf and use them, but it increases the complexity of the overall system. It's great to not have to build something, but when something goes wrong with it, you have to actually understand how it works. Or when that thing you're depending on changes, that actually changes the outcome of your work, right? So the ability to move quickly is a great advantage as long as you're capable of understanding and being confident about all of the pieces around you that are also changing while you're changing. So ultimately, we end up at this place that feels like a trade-off, right? In order to create speed, we've also introduced complexity, and introducing that complexity can actually become a drag and reduce our speed. So we have to make sure that we can manage the complexity and truly understand everything that's changing in our environment in a way that allows us to keep moving quickly on the pieces that we're building, even if those pieces are, pulling in pieces from other places. So why do people want to move fast? I've alluded to competition. I've alluded to innovation, trying to get things out in front of your customers quickly. But there are truly clear business results that result from moving quickly. So these are some numbers from some IT or some McKinsey research on moving quickly and high performing IT organizations. But basically, when you separate out organizations that function really effectively from those that are struggling, you see multipliers on revenue growth, increase in shareholder returns, better operating margins, and ultimately an increase in innovation, which then returns and feeds all of those other pieces. So that's the upside. If you're doing this really well, you're going to see the difference at all levels of your business, not just within the engineering organization or your R&D organization. On the downside, the delivery of software is very much a corporate level issue at this point. So recently, the CEO of Volkswagen lost his job over poor software performance. There were entire projects, so cars delayed getting to the market because of issues in software delivery. So this is not just about the internal IT organization anymore. This is about the product that all of these companies are putting into the market for their customers and being able to do it effectively and to do it in a way that's going to, again, be ahead of your competitors. And so when you're struggling to deliver software effectively, it's, it's a board level conversation, I would say at this point, not an IT department conversation. So where is this going? I mean, as I said, we're in a constant state of evolution. So yes, there's a future to think about, but the future is somewhat already here. Again, we're focusing on speed. We want to move faster, but we're trying to build the confidence to allow us to accelerate into that. And so CICD has always been about the same thing. We can talk about the specifics, the details of what's involved in CICD, but the goal has always been the same, which is I've created a change. I want to know that that change is good so that I can put it out in front of my customers. And again, initially that was based around simple code changes owned by the organization that was doing the building, doing the testing, executing testing, and putting that out in sort of a simple monolithic environment. But things have shifted very, very significantly. And we're seeing that today. We're seeing the impact of that today, although we're not all necessarily keeping up with it. So if you look at this diagram on the left side, what you see is all these sources of change that I've been talking about. So not just the code that you're writing internally in your organization, open source code that you're bringing in, services that you're dependent on that have been built in other parts of your organization, third-party services that you're depending on that are outside of your organization but critical to the function of your service. I mean, many companies today are, even login is provided by a third party. And when login is provided by a third party, you need to make sure that it's working properly, or else no one is even using your site. The underlying infrastructure, we've evolved to primarily being able to adapt things from the cloud. So we're dependent on others providing all of the underlying physical infrastructure and then layers of abstraction on top of that. And all of that is constantly changing. Every single one of those providers is making improvements, modifications to the pieces they build, and all of that change drives change in your environment. So all of that can be pipelined into this build, test, deploy, release process, which is effectively where you get the visibility to know this is still working as expected. This is going to function correctly for my customers. And the combination of all of these things, meaning the services we've built, the code we've written, the external services we're using, is still presenting a great experience for our customers. And they're getting what they want. And so on the right side, you see that also the consumers of these changes are growing. So yes, you have your own end users and they're using the website, they're using a mobile app, they're talking to your system through APIs. There are other services that have been integrated with what you've built maybe, and they are all dependent on your changes. So this entire cycle repeats downstream as it gets integrated into other environments. So as we think about this at CircleCI, and again, thinking about CI/CD in terms of the goal, which is delivering change confidently, regardless of the driver of that change and regardless of the ultimate end point, we think about our footprint as being everything involved in that cycle. So whether it's all the way to the left at the point where a developer is thinking about implementing something for the first time, or all the way to the right where we are allowing or where we are managing the slow release of capabilities out to very specific customers to be confident, even in a production environment, that it's doing what we expected. All of that is about feeling confident that our changes are good and that our customers are getting a great experience. And so one particular example of that is historically we've always worked with source code repositories. We recently added GitLab, which is a great example of expanding to meet the needs of the growing environment. But we're also using that as the foundation to connect to other things like Docker Hub, which is a source of change. Everyone is using underlying images to build their systems. And those are changing, right? Every time there's an update to one of those, particularly if you're using, a Docker latest type tag versus a specific version, knowing what the impact is going to be, or just being able to take advantage of updates to those images because there are fixes for vulnerabilities. Like, you want to be able to move quickly in that environment, and all of that is driving change in your environment. So pipelining all of that together and pushing it out to your customers, not just because of the factors around innovation and giving them the capabilities they want, but also to keep them secure, maintain trust, deal with any issues that come up, whether they're things that you tried to push out that weren't good. You need to have a very good follow-on process to be able to correct that, and all that comes with doing that with confidence. So ultimately, our goal is to take this underlying capability and manage it on your behalf so that your teams can focus on innovation. The change itself is what we're very good at dealing with so that your teams can focus on the innovation that you're driving for your customer. So again, we're trying to understand that problem, which is every team moving faster, every team wanting to move faster and wanting to have the confidence in order to actually move faster, using tooling, process capability to solve it, and then give you the opportunity to be providing impact to your own customers. So let's talk a little bit about what that means culturally. And for me, this is a really, really important point. There's um, lots of opportunity to, to build tooling, to take advantage of tooling, to automate processes, to think about, delivering things in a way that you feel really good about. Um, but if the culture of the organization doesn't support that, doesn't adapt to that, then all of that work will be less impactful. And the good news is all of this drives a very positive outcome for the business. Developers actually want to deliver impact, right? Developers don't want to spend their days fighting with tooling, fighting with process, writing tickets, trying to understand how to get something done. They want to get something done. And I personally, I haven't just been a CTO for the whole time that I've been in this industry. I spent a lot of my career writing software, building applications, putting things in front of the customer, in front of customers. And um, I think it was about 11 years ago that I first tried continuous deployment. It felt a little bit um, risky, I would say, when I first tried it. I was a little nervous that we were building a company at the time. I was a little nervous that we would create more issues for ourselves than we solve. But after experiencing it for a couple days, I would say I swore that I would never go back. The feeling of knowing what it is that you want to put in front of your customer, building it and getting it in front of them for feedback, on a same day cycle versus a multi-month cycle, is something that's really, really rewarding for the developer themselves and for everyone in your R&D organization, depending on who's building products. So product managers, designers, engineers who can collaborate together and get something quickly out in front of customers and see the feedback. It might be a very simple implementation. It might be something that just starts to get a sense of what customers are trying to do, but seeing that work gives you the confidence to then build on top of it, right? To then expand the capabilities, or to say, hey, this doesn't seem to be what our customers are trying to do. We must be misunderstanding something. Let's try a few other things. And to be able to adapt and know that you're really building things that customers want is self-reinforcing. Engineers, again, product managers, designers, everybody involved in this process starts to feel this positive sense that they're having real impact on customers, which makes them happier, makes them more productive because they focus more energy on trying to do that, every day. And honestly, like, we're at a time where people are pretty tired. It's been an exhausting couple of years. And if at work we have a place where we can just get things done and feel like we understand what we're trying to do and feel like we're having real impact, I think that's extremely, extremely rewarding. And in order to build that, it's not just about having the right tooling, having a process in place. It's about connecting your teams with the goals of the customers. So really helping engineers, product managers, designers, everybody in the R&D cycle really see what's happening when they put things in front of customers, truly understand what customers are trying to do, and be able to modify that and see the impact immediately. So that fast feedback loop is not just about, did I change a thing that, technically works correctly, but did I change something in a way that is helping our customers do their job better? Are they reacting to that in a way that's showing that they really appreciate it and they want more of that? Or is something going wrong? They're not adopting it. What does that tell us and how can we work from there? And when you have that direct connection into your R&D organization, even I keep mentioning product managers, but not filtering at that level, like truly seeing that feedback on a daily basis or on a regular basis, however often you're delivering, then that connection really builds that drive that I'm talking about from a developer satisfaction perspective, which is you see the impact that you're having and you want to drive more of that impact. So, from a vision perspective, where this really gets us in the CI/CD space, CircleCI in particular, is making software a problem that is just about ideas. Whatever you can come up with, you can make it happen. We're sort of in this spot where this complexity is increased in the name of trying to speed up, where people are getting stuck. And the delivery is becoming the problem, and we solve that problem. We take that away so that you can focus your team, your energy, your investments on delivering your great ideas out to your customers instead of trying to work through all the details of how to make that happen. So I dabbled a little bit in sort of productivity and happiness, but what the ultimate outcome of that is for most organizations is a great team. Um, you know, Engineers got into the industry primarily, can't speak on behalf of all engineers, because they wanted to solve problems. They want to solve real problems for real customers, whether their customer is someone internal because they're a platform team building low level infrastructure, whether the customer is the end customer because they're up in the user interface building great interactions for the people that use the product every day. Doesn't really matter. They're trying to solve interesting problems, and being afraid, being nervous about putting something out because they're not sure how it's going to go. That lack of confidence really drives down the ability to focus on what engineers truly care about. And the other thing that drives that down is toil, like feeling like it's really hard to get something out. Not just that you don't have confidence when it goes out, but the actual process or tools or whatever you have to use to get something out the door is kind of uh, drags on engineers, I guess is the best way to describe it. Meaning, um, I want this feeling that I'm pushing things out, I'm having success, I'm working on things that I care about, that I'm passionate about, and I'm able to make that happen versus I run up against blockers. I have to go do this thing to make this happen. I have to go do that thing to make that happen versus I'm focused on the customer and I'm delivering impact. And so that combination of feeling like it's low overhead and the things I'm doing are really impactful ultimately leads to more passionate engineers, people who are really connected to the mission of the company, who are excited about what they're delivering for their customers. And again, that builds a feedback loop that's very positive for all of those folks. Every time you succeed at doing that, you want to do more of it. And one thing that I think is really important in this is that creating that environment, creating that culture, and building the space for an elite team actually builds the space to create elite engineers. There's lots of talk in our industry about hiring the best and 10x engineers and going and finding the perfect person. But people perform in environments that allow them to perform. They don't perform just because of who they are. Like, absolutely, there are different skill sets, and your organization is different from another organization. So, even what's going to be most valuable in your environment can be different from another environment. But building an organization, a structure, an environment in which engineers can be successful. They're not burdened by process. They feel confident when they deliver. They understand the system and can drive real business impact. Will connect your engineers to the business in a way that ultimately makes them more successful, meaning you don't have to go out in search of these mythical engineers who don't exist that just show up and solve all of your problems for you. So, to summarize, what have we talked about here today? First of all, software is everywhere. We're all building software. We're all trying to differentiate our business based off of great software experiences. And we've done a bunch of things in the history in recent history in our industry to make that faster, leveraging more third-party capabilities, adding other people's code into our code bases, using existing infrastructure. All of that introduces risk and complexity, and so we need to manage that. We need to think about how to successfully deliver with those newly introduced risks in a way that continues to give us confidence that we can move quickly and we can um, innovate and deliver value faster than our competition. It's an ecosystem. It's not just the software we're writing anymore. The ultimate goal, or the original goal of CICD, which I believe is still the ultimate goal, is focused on managing change, but the change is coming from more places. It's an entire ecosystem. You've probably heard the expression, the software supply chain recently. So we're pulling in pieces from everywhere, and they all impact what we're delivering and how we're delivering it. And so we need to understand and have a clear picture of that entire ecosystem. The processes and approaches that we take to do that are supported by a culture shift. You have to have your developers thinking about the customer problem. And again, that customer might be internal, but who is the customer for the thing that I'm building? And how do I help them succeed? Because when I understand my customer and I connect with that customer and I help them succeed, I feel like I'm succeeding. And that creates the desire for me to even do better. I see that it's possible. I start to see the potential of how I can deliver effectively, and I want to do more of that. And ultimately, I say I, but engineers tend to be parts of teams. The unit of construction is often the team. Folks play different roles, and they work together to get things done. And so you're trying to build an elite team, multiple elite teams, depending on the size of your organization, how you're structured. And doing that, creating the environment that allows teams to succeed, builds up the engineers that you have in that environment. It gives them the space to be successful, to learn, to grow, and to become really, really effective engineers for the goals of your organization, which ultimately returns to overall goals of your business. All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to wrap it up there so we can take some questions if there are any. I appreciate all of you joining us.
Yep. Hey, Rob, it looks like there is one question from the audience, and it is basically off of that last slide. Can you elaborate or give any examples of companies who have implemented these strategies successfully?
Yeah, I think there are many. I think one of the important takeaways, I mean, there's some that probably everybody knows. A good example of an organization that talks a lot publicly about process, about team structure, about creating this environment is Spotify. They put out a bunch of material, it feels like many years ago now, about their approach. Twilio is another great example that's well known and well understood and easy to find. I mean, there are lots of companies that I've seen that I've worked with, but there's not a lot of public information, so there's not a ton to talk about there. But if you look at those two examples, I think what's important. Again, Twilio, their CEO wrote a book called Ask Your Developer. Um, I think that's the title of the book. Anyway, you can find it, or maybe that's just the billboard on the 101. Spotify, again, put out a bunch of material. But what's interesting about those is they talk a lot about the drivers, which I think you should pay a lot of attention to, right? The same goals. How do we make our engineers successful? How do we connect them with the business? How do we get out of the way and prevent them from doing all of this toil and overhead and work that's a drag on what it is that they're truly trying to do? And again, how do we make them successful, open lines of communication, help them understand the customer need, et cetera? But the thing that I would highlight is almost immediately after those documents, videos, blog posts, whatever they are, after they're published, those companies are immediately changing. So it's not just that their approach to how they deliver software is agile and is constantly and is adapting to the needs of the customer. They're constantly adapting to their own needs. They're constantly reflecting on what of our approach is working and which parts of our approach are not working, and how can we continue to evolve. So don't necessarily go look at another organization and say they did this in this way, therefore that will work for me. Look at how they're doing it and ask, what is it that drove them to that? What was their goal? What would that look like in our organization if it would be successful? And the other thing I would say with that is, you often get the summary at the end of a very long journey. Here's some things we decided to do. It often doesn't include the things that we chose not to do. And B, those things were often tried in very small experiments. So the way that you think about delivering software, meaning I want to make small changes, I want to make them quickly, I want to validate that they're good, that they're working, is a great way to think about how you would make changes in your organization to get to this state. Meaning, don't show up on a Monday morning and tell everyone in the organization, now we're doing everything differently, because no one will know what to do. But find either a small thing to change or a small group in which to change it, so that you can test out ideas, get feedback, and see how those things work in your organization, because every organization is different. The people are different, the goals are different, the environment in which you operate, whether it's compliance needs or health and safety needs, whatever those are, vary quite drastically between industries and organizations. And so it's really about, absolutely go find some of these organizations, again, the very public ones that have information out there. I could go on, there's a long list. Um, but look at them and say, what of this is interesting to me? Why were they trying to do this? And what would this look like to be successful in our environment, versus I'm just going to copy and paste everything that this other organization did and expect that to work here.
Great. So that is actually all the questions from the audience. So we just wanted to say thank you guys so much for joining us. Please feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions. Otherwise, we will be emailing the recording of this webinar in the next couple of days. So thank you again. And thank you, Rob, for a wonderful presentation.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.